India has made a rational choice. India is the largest country within the global majority. All the states belonging to this group are similar, differing only in their capacities. Over the past 2 years, the concept of the global majority has become entrenched in Russian foreign policy discourse. It refers to the more than 100 countries not participating in the West's economic war against Russia. These states act according to their own reasons, but the result is the same since early 2022, our global connections have not only not diminished but have even grown. And if there is one country that most fittingly embodies the majority, it is India, whose Prime Minister visited Moscow this week. The results of the visit were perhaps best summarized by the Kiev authorities, who stated that it was a huge disappointment for them. This alone is enough to deem the new round of high-level contacts between Moscow and Delhi a great success. The disappointment in Kiev and the West is linked to India's independent policy. Yet, they can do nothing about it. India is too significant a country, one with which the West must maintain dialogue despite its whims. Why does India continue to actively develop relations with Russia? Especially considering that the US and Europe are currently directing all their diplomatic efforts against Moscow, and our main global partner and ally is China, with whom India has, to put it mildly, a complicated relationship. Moreover, during the meeting between Vladimir Putin and Narendra Modi, the parties agreed to increase bilateral trade to $100 billion by 2030 and to develop bilateral payment systems. To begin with, India is the largest country in the global majority. All states in this group are similar, differing only in their capacities. Small or large, wealthy or poor, they all want to determine their own future and act according to their plans. None wish to live under the barracks-like order proposed by the US and its European satellites. However, this also means that the countries of the global majority are not ready to sacrifice their companies for Russian interests. The most effective results are achieved where India's interests coincide with ours. Let me emphasize again, they do not subordinate to our interests, nor do they want to subordinate to anyone, but rather, their interests coincide with ours. This is far better than cooperation against one's will. We saw the latter during the Cold War, when the USSR's allies constantly looked towards the West. Demanding economic suicide from Russia-friendly countries for our victory over the West would be somewhat presumptuous. For India, as for others, Russia is a battering ram, decisively breaking the US and Europe's monopoly in world affairs. There's nothing wrong with this. We know that all of Russia's current actions primarily serve its own security interests. But the results reflect the desires of those who maintain constructive and friendly relations with us. This, not economic benefit, is of utmost importance to India and the rest. When only Iran or a few small states like North Korea opposed the West, there was little chance of toppling authoritarian orders in global politics. Now, Russia has taken up the cause. It opposes the Americans in Ukraine for its reasons. But given its scale and capabilities, Russia's achievement of its goals is likely to lead to the liberation of others. Economic benefit ranks second to strategic considerations. Over the past 2 years, India has become the largest buyer of Russian oil. As a result, bilateral trade has grown from $12 billion to over $65 billion in recent years. For Russia, this means not only economic benefit but also maintaining its position among leading global players and avoiding dependency on a single partner. For India, it is a colossal resource for achieving its development goals. Like all global majority countries, India faces enormous challenges, addressing healthcare issues, mass poverty, and inadequate education. These are, of course, the top priorities for Modi's government. Decisions made in areas like free trade in services and investments, mutual recognition of education and academic degrees, electronic visas, and expanded contacts can support these goals and benefit Russia. Such an extensive cooperation program does not concern Indian authorities about potential US dissatisfaction. Especially now, despite their victory, the ruling party in India, led by the Prime Minister, performed less successfully than in previous years. This means they have even less reason to bow to the West. Modi has never done this, and he certainly will not create an illusion of weakness now. Moscow and Delhi expressed readiness to actively work on enhancing logistics connections, focusing on increasing infrastructure capacity. This is highly relevant for India, given its geopolitically challenging position. Firstly, it is virtually cut off from Eurasia by the Himalayas, beyond which lies a massive China and perpetually unfriendly Pakistan. Secondly, the country is excluded from the most active international trade routes, primarily linking East and Southeast Asia with the US. These regions host the world's largest production and consumption centers. A serious break in economic ties between China and the US is still far off. Therefore, India's chances of becoming a significant part of global trade and logistics are currently not very high. This compels the country to closely monitor the north-south routes, where Russia is the largest partner. It is no surprise that the agreement to develop these routes was one of the outcomes of the Indian Prime Minister's visit to Moscow. However, there are many difficulties such as Afghanistan, whose stabilization is hindered by the West, relatively impoverished Central Asian markets, and Iran, balancing on the brink of confrontation with the US and its allies. Last year, India supported the development of a transport corridor from itself to the Middle East and further to Europe. However, its prospects are becoming increasingly bleak as the Israeli government drags its country into perpetual conflict with its neighbors. There was a time when trade routes between India and the Arab world flourished. But all this, like the Chinese Silk Road, is a thing of the past, before global trade came under the control of US, and previously British, naval forces. Yet, no one in India intends to abandon economic and political cooperation with the US. Delhi's freedom of action on the world stage requires a counterbalance to the ever-growing power of China. Additionally, the US and Europe are rightly seen in India as sources of investment and technology. Especially considering that Western companies are slowly beginning to withdraw their production from China. Although technology sharing is more complex, the West is always very reluctant to share its technology. India expects more willingness from Russia to localize defense industry production based on Russian solutions. Now, Moscow and Delhi have confirmed their desire to increase joint military cooperation activities, including the production of spare parts and components in India. In India, they understand that the conflict between Russia and the West in Ukraine is a result of the development of international politics after the Cold War. And they are unlikely to have any illusions that the US will show goodwill and easily give up even part of the Soviet legacy, which they consider their own. Therefore, constructive relations between our countries, epitomized by the Indian Prime Minister's visit to Moscow, are the product of rational choice by both sides. This choice is based on their independence in decision-making and understanding of their interests. In other words, what Russia believes should be the foundation of any normal foreign policy.